Samuel "Doc" Reeves had worked as a battlefield medic long enough to recognize when something was seriously wrong. He had seen all kinds of injuries during his time in the war zone, but nothing had prepared him for what he was looking at right now. The Veltoni woman on his medical table was dying in a way he couldn't understand. Her skin had special patterns that glowed with light. These patterns usually moved and pulsed like a heartbeat. But now they were getting darker and darker. Something was shutting down inside her body, and Doc's years of medical training gave him no answers. "Doc, we have 3 more wounded coming in from the fighting at the edge of camp," called out Nurse Martinez. Her voice was calm but urgent. She had learned how to stay focused even when things got crazy. 2 of them are human soldiers. 1 is Veltoni with burns from an energy weapon. "Take them to the emergency area and keep them stable," Doc said. He didn't look up from his patient. Her condition was getting worse by the minute. "This woman has something wrong with her that I've never seen before." The woman had told him her name was healer Liana Velmos before she passed out. She had been hurt in a terrorist bombing that hit their field hospital 6 hours ago. But her injuries from the explosion were minor. Just a few small cuts from flying metal pieces. That wasn't what was killing her. Her breathing was too shallow. Her heartbeat was all over the place. The glowing patterns on her skin were almost completely dark now. For the Veltoni people, these patterns were like a health monitor built right into their bodies. When they went dark, it meant serious trouble. "Her energy levels are going crazy," said Specialist Chin. He was watching the medical equipment that combined human technology with Veltoni medical tools they had salvaged. "But it's not too much energy. It's like all her electrical systems are being drained empty." Doc looked at the screens showing her vital signs. His medical training helped him read the numbers automatically. What he saw made no sense. It was like she was bleeding out, but instead of losing blood, she was losing something else. Some kind of life energy. "It's like she's bleeding life force instead of blood," he said out loud. The medical tent where they worked sat in neutral territory between the human military base and the Veltoni forces. They treated wounded soldiers from both sides during the shaky ceasefire. Everyone hoped the ceasefire would hold. If it didn't, the small border fights they were having now would turn into a full interstellar war. Doc had been treating Veltoni wounded alongside human casualties for several months now. He had learned enough about their bodies to provide basic medical care. But what was happening to Liana was way beyond the basic training they had given him. "Healer Velmos," Doc said gently. He checked her responses and noticed her skin felt cold even though her body temperature was normal. "Can you tell me what happened? Your injuries are small, but your symptoms are bad." Liana's eyes opened slowly. Took obvious effort. Her eyes were violet-colored, which marked her as Veltoni, but now they looked dull and tired. The exhaustion she felt seemed to come from somewhere deeper than any physical wound. "I pushed myself too far," she whispered. Her accent made the common language sound almost musical, even though she was clearly in pain. "Too many healings. I gave away too much of my essence." "Essence?" Doc asked. "Veltoni healing requires sacrifice," she explained. Her breathing got harder as she struggled to find the words. "We share our own life force with our patients. I have been treating human casualties when your medicine could not help them." Doc felt the pieces coming together in his mind. The picture they made wasn't good. "You've been using your own life energy to heal human soldiers? The wounded were dying. Your medicine works well for your people, but some injuries require bioenergy healing. Only Veltoni can do that." Liana's patterns flickered weakly. She was fighting to stay conscious. "I could not let them die when I had the power to save them. But using that power is killing you now. The cost of healing must always be paid by someone," Liana said. I chose to pay it myself rather than let others suffer. Doc looked at the medical displays. Her energy levels were dropping toward critical. Then he looked at this Veltoni woman. She had been secretly risking her life to save human soldiers. She did this while their own medical supplies focused on treating their own species first. How many? He asked quietly. 17 human soldiers over the past 3 months, Liana said. Her voice got weaker with each word. Energy burns that your medicine could not treat. Internal injuries that required bioresonance healing. Brain damage that needed direct life force transfer. Each healing cost me more than I could safely give. But I could not watch them die when I had the power to help. And now you're dying from what it cost you. The life essence debt must be paid, she said. Either through rest and recovery, which I do not have time for, or through. She didn't finish, but Doc understood what she meant. He studied the readings. They showed her condition getting worse despite everything human medicine could do. Liana was dying from energy loss that his training had never covered. She was dying because she chose to save human lives at the cost of her own. Is there anything that can bring back the energy you lost? Doc asked. Any way to replace what you gave away? Veltoni healing technology could help, Liana said. Her smile had no anger in it, even though the situation was cruelly ironic. But our medical supplies are kept for our own wounded. The same species barrier that made me necessary for treating human casualties now prevents me from getting the treatment I need. What about mixing between species? Could human energy somehow add to what you lost? Liana's eyes opened wider. Her fading patterns showed the first bit of hope Doc had seen since he started treating her. It is possible in theory, but the energy transfer would require direct bioresonance contact. Blood to blood, life force to life force, like a transfusion but sharing the essence of life itself. Such contact between species has never been tried before. The risks are unknown. The results could be permanent. Doc looked around the medical tent. The other staff were busy treating casualties from the latest attack. They had no idea that one of their patients was dying because she had selflessly healed their own people. Permanent how? He asked. Bioresonance contact creates bonds between those who share life essence, Liana explained. She struggled to get the words out. Consciousness connection, emotional linkage, shared awareness that goes beyond individual identity. You would become part of my healing abilities. I would become part of your medical knowledge, forever linked through the energy we share. Doc felt his medical training fighting with human caution. But there was also simple gratitude for someone who had risked everything to save his fellow soldiers. The smart choice was to keep using normal treatment and hope that Veltoni medical personnel would eventually show up with the right technology. The right choice was to take responsibility for saving someone who had already sacrificed everything to save others. Tell me what I need to do, he said. He reached for his medical kit and mentally prepared himself for the strangest treatment of his career. Doc, Liana whispered. Her hand found his with more strength than she should have had. You do not understand the full meaning of this. Bioresonance bonding is not just medical treatment. It is a permanent connection that will change both our lives in ways neither of us can predict. Maybe, Doc said. But you saved 17 of my people by risking your life. The least I can do is risk mine to save yours. As Doc prepared to do a medical procedure that would either save Liana's life or create problems that neither human nor Veltoni medicine had ever dealt with, he realized something. His simple goal of treating battlefield casualties was about to become something much more complex, and infinitely more important than routine military medicine. The bioresonance transfer needed equipment that Doc had to improvise. He used human medical technology and salvaged Veltoni healing tools. He was creating what amounted to the most dangerous medical procedure of his career. And he was working with systems he barely understood. Liana guided him through the process with whispered instructions. She was teaching him techniques no human had ever attempted. The connection requires direct contact between circulatory systems, she explained as Doc prepared the hybrid transfusion device. But unlike human blood transfusion, this involves transferring life essence that carries consciousness, memory, and bioenergy patterns. So I'm not just giving you blood, Doc said. I'm giving you what exactly? Part of your life force, part of your awareness, part of your ability to heal and be healed. Liana's patterns flickered weakly. She was fighting to stay conscious long enough to finish explaining. And I will share the same with you, creating permanent linkage that goes beyond individual identity. Doc activated the transfer device. The combined human and Veltoni medical technology looked like something that would either revolutionize medicine between species or kill them both in fascinating new ways. Have you ever seen this done before? He asked. Never between species, Liana said. The theoretical frameworks exist, but the practical applications have never been tested. Her smile mixed exhaustion with something that might have been excitement. We are about to conduct the most dangerous medical experiment in recorded history. Well, Doc said, connecting the transfer lines to his circulatory system. I've always been terrible at following safe medical protocols anyway. The moment the bioresonance transfer began, Doc felt his consciousness expand to include awareness that definitely wasn't his own. Through the connection, he could sense Liana's life force becoming stable as his energy added to her empty reserves. But he could also feel her memories, her emotions, her understanding of healing techniques that human medicine had never imagined. The feeling was overwhelming. It was like suddenly having access to a completely different nervous system while keeping his own identity. He could feel Liana's relief as her energy level stabilized, her gratitude for his willingness to risk unknown results, and her growing amazement as the bioresonance created connections between their minds that neither species had thought possible. The bond is forming, Liana said. Her voice now carried sounds that Doc could somehow understand despite never hearing them before. Can you feel the healing pathways activating? Doc could feel something activating, though healing pathways seemed like too small a description for the sudden awareness he had. He could sense bioenergy flows, cellular regeneration patterns, and diagnostic abilities that worked through consciousness rather than equipment. I can sense injuries that aren't visible, he said. Energy imbalances, cellular damage, brain trauma that normal scans don't detect. The life bond grants access to Veltoni healing abilities, Liana said. She sat up slowly. Her glowing patterns now shone with renewed life. They included colors Doc had never seen before, while providing me with human medical knowledge and understanding of physiology. We have become a unified medical system that goes beyond the limits of either species' approach to healing. Unified medical system, Doc repeated. He tested his new awareness by examining his own vital signs through senses he'd never had before. This is either the most successful medical procedure in history, or the most elaborate way anyone's ever accidentally merged consciousness with someone from another species. The bioresonance readings are extraordinary, said Specialist Chun. He was staring at diagnostic displays that showed unprecedented coordination between human and Veltoni biological patterns. Your life signs are perfectly synchronized, and the energy readings suggest you're operating as a single biological system. Doc looked at Liana. He realized he could sense her emotional responses to their shared condition. Relief, wonder, and something deeper that suggested the life bond had created connections that went far beyond medical necessity. What exactly have we created here? He asked. A partnership that allows human medical precision to combine with Veltoni bioenergy healing, Liana replied. Her consciousness touched his through the bond in ways that made verbal communication seem almost unnecessary, but also a permanent connection that makes us responsible for each other's welfare and grants us joint authority over both species' medical systems. Joint authority? The life bond is recognized under both human and Veltoni medical law, Liana explained. She activated displays that showed the legal meaning of what they had just done. It creates provisional partnerships with shared decision-making authority over treatment protocols, resource allocation, and medical ethics. We have become the first officially recognized interspecies medical team in recorded history. Doc studied the authorization levels that were suddenly available to him. The life bond had granted him access to medical technology, treatment protocols, and diagnostic systems that human medicine had never been allowed to use. This seems like a lot of authority to grant based on emergency medical treatment, he said. The life bond exists precisely because the most advanced healing capabilities require personal investment that goes beyond political boundaries or species limitations, Liana said. Her expression grew serious as she accessed reports from across the medical facility. But the authority comes with responsibilities. We must protect medical neutrality, ensure treatment serves healing rather than military goals, and prevent the weaponization of healing technology. Weaponization? Doc asked. Liana activated intelligence displays that made Doc's stomach sink. Corporate interests have been trying to capture Veltoni healers. They want to extract the secrets of bioenergy manipulation for military uses. The life bond grants us joint authority to prevent such exploitation. But it also makes us targets for elimination by groups that prefer medical technology to serve conquest rather than care. Doc examined the intelligence reports. His new awareness let him detect patterns of organized medical sabotage that his previous training wouldn't have recognized. The equipment failures we've been having, he said. They weren't accidents, were they? Corporate security forces have been deliberately targeting medical facilities that show successful interspecies cooperation, Liana said. Her patterns shifted to colors that Doc's improved understanding recognized as controlled anger. The attack on our hospital was specifically designed to eliminate personnel who might prove that human and Veltoni medicine can work together. They prefer that both species remain dependent on corporate-supplied medical technology, rather than developing independent cooperative capabilities. And now we have proof that interspecies medical cooperation is not only possible but extraordinarily effective, Doc said. Combined with the legal authority to expose and prevent further sabotage. Liana stood up, testing her renewed strength while accessing diagnostic systems through their shared consciousness. But we also have enemies who will stop at nothing to prevent that proof from reaching official channels. Doc felt the weight of responsibility settling around him like a particularly complex piece of medical equipment that he'd have to learn to operate under hostile conditions. So our emergency medical procedure has accidentally created the most advanced healing partnership in known space, he said, while simultaneously making us targets for elimination by corporate interests who profit from medical scarcity. An accurate assessment of our situation, Liana confirmed with a smile that suggested she found their circumstances more exciting than terrifying. Though I should mention that the life bond also grants us access to protective capabilities that make elimination attempts considerably more challenging than our enemies might expect. As alarms began sounding throughout the medical facility, Doc realized something. The alarms indicated incoming hostile forces that weren't part of either official military. His simple goal of saving one patient's life had just evolved into protecting the future of interspecies medical cooperation. From groups that viewed healing as a product to be controlled rather than a skill to be shared. Well, he said, accessing Veltoni defensive systems through the life bond while maintaining human medical protocols. This definitely wasn't covered in combat medic training. Though I have to admit, having access to alien healing abilities might come in handy during whatever's about to happen. The life bond grants more than healing abilities, Liana replied. Her consciousness merged with his as they prepared to defend their medical facility against attackers who viewed their cooperation as a threat to profitable warfare. It grants the power to protect what matters most, together. The corporate attack on the medical facility came with all the subtlety of a meteor strike, and about the same regard for medical neutrality. Armed security forces surrounded the hospital. Overhead, combat drones held positions that suggested they were prepared to destroy the entire facility, rather than allow evidence of successful interspecies medical cooperation to survive. "This is Commander Blake Meridian, Corporate Security," came the message from the lead assault vehicle. "We are conducting lawful recovery of stolen medical assets and personnel of interest. Surrender the alien subjects and the compromised human medical personnel immediately." "Compromised human medical personnel?" Doc asked. He accessed defensive systems through the life bond while coordinating evacuation procedures for patients who couldn't be moved. "I guess successful medical treatment of alien patients qualifies as treason in corporate accounting. The life bond grants us access to protective capabilities that most medical facilities don't possess," Liana replied. She activated Veltoni defensive systems that transformed the hospital from vulnerable medical center into something much more defensible. "Though we'll need to protect our patients while demonstrating that medical cooperation serves healing rather than military objectives." The first shots came from corporate forces testing the hospital's defenses. But instead of hitting vulnerable medical equipment, their weapons struck energy barriers. The barriers absorbed the attacks and converted the energy into power for improved medical systems. The life bond had activated automatic defenses. The battle that followed showed why the life bond had never been attempted between species before. The coordination needed to simultaneously defend against military assault while providing medical treatment to casualties from both sides required a level of consciousness integration that individual awareness couldn't achieve. Doc found himself treating injured corporate soldiers who'd been wounded by their own commanders' escalating tactics. He used Veltoni healing techniques to save the lives of people who'd been sent to capture him. Meanwhile, Liana coordinated evacuation procedures for patients. She used her improved understanding of human body systems to provide treatment that neither species could have managed alone. "Corporate Command, this is Field Unit 7, came panicked messages from the assault force. "The medical facility is somehow converting our weapons fire into defensive energy, and they're treating our wounded personnel despite active combat operations. Request clarification on engagement protocols. Maintain assault parameters." Blake's voice carried the kind of cold calculation that suggested corporate profits mattered more than soldier survival. "Medical personnel treating enemy wounded constitute legitimate military targets under corporate security protocols." Doc paused in his treatment of a corporate soldier whose injuries were severe enough to need bioenergy healing. He accessed the life bond's improved awareness to confirm what he'd just heard. "Did they just classify medical treatment as an act of war?" he asked. "Corporate security doctrine defines any action that reduces their tactical advantage as hostile behavior," Liana replied grimly. Her consciousness touched his through the bond with information that painted a disturbing picture of corporate military philosophy. Healing enemy wounded prevents them from being eliminated, which interferes with corporate objectives. So they're willing to let their own people die rather than allow medical neutrality to interfere with profitable warfare, Doc said. "The life bond protocols were created precisely to protect medical personnel from such calculations," Liana said. She activated emergency broadcasts that would document corporate violations of medical neutrality for interstellar war crimes courts. But the protocols require formal recognition of the bond's authority. Doc looked around the medical facility. Their combined human and Veltoni treatment abilities were saving lives that neither approach could have handled on its own. Meanwhile, corporate forces continued attacking a medical facility that was treating their own wounded. Formal recognition, he said, making a decision that would either legitimize their medical partnership or make them permanent targets for elimination. You mean the life bond ceremony that makes our cooperation official, rather than just emergency medical treatment? The ceremony that grants us permanent authority to prevent the weaponization of medical technology, Liana confirmed, while ensuring that healing serves all species rather than corporate convenience. Though completing the bond under these circumstances would make our partnership permanent regardless of personal preferences or political consequences. Doc examined the corporate soldiers he was treating. Several of them were looking around the medical facility with expressions that suggested they'd never seen enemy wounded being treated with the same care as friendly casualties. You know what I think? He said. I'm beginning to be able to sense what you think, actually, Liana said. One of the more interesting side effects of consciousness integration. I think, Doc said, reaching toward the life bond formalization controls, that medical neutrality is more important than personal safety, and that people who try to weaponize healing technology need to be stopped regardless of the risks involved. Are you certain? Liana asked. The permanent life bond creates connections that go beyond individual identity. We would become partners in ways that neither human nor Veltoni relationships typically include. Doc looked at the alien woman whose willingness to sacrifice her life to save human soldiers had led to the most important medical breakthrough in interspecies history. Her consciousness was already becoming essential to his understanding of what healing could accomplish when cooperation went beyond species boundaries. Liana, I've been a combat medic for 8 years, he said. I've learned that the most important medical decisions are usually the ones where you choose to help people regardless of who they are, where they come from, or whether helping them creates problems you can't predict. He activated the formalization protocols that would make their life bond permanent. Besides, consciousness sharing with someone whose main concern is healing people seems like it might improve my medical practice considerably. And I, Liana replied, her consciousness merging more completely with his as the ceremony began, have learned that the most effective healing happens when different approaches combine to create abilities that neither could achieve alone. The formal life bond ceremony took place in the middle of active combat. Wounded soldiers from both sides served as witnesses to the first officially recognized interspecies medical partnership in recorded history. Their promises included vows to use their shared abilities to heal rather than harm, to protect medical neutrality against corporate weaponization, and to ensure that advanced medical technology served life rather than death, regardless of species or political connections. I promise, Doc said as bioscanners confirmed his permanent integration with Veltoni healing systems, to learn proper bioenergy protocols, since apparently sharing life force involves significantly more complex medical procedures than human blood transfusions. The laughter that followed came from wounded soldiers who were receiving treatment that neither human nor Veltoni medicine could have provided on its own. It showed that cooperation could overcome challenges that corporate interests preferred to keep impossible to solve. And I promise, Liana replied, to help you understand that the most advanced medical technology works best when operated by individuals whose personal bonds guarantee they'll put patient welfare over military goals. As the life bond ceremony completed, corporate forces found themselves unable to continue attacking a medical facility that was clearly serving healing rather than military purposes. Doc felt the weight of permanent responsibility settling around him like a particularly sophisticated piece of medical equipment that he'd be learning to operate for the rest of his life. 6 months after the corporate assault that had failed to capture them, Doc stood in the observation deck of the New Geneva Medical Center. He watched interspecies medical teams treat patients using methods that combined human precision with Veltoni bioenergy healing. The life bond integration with Liana had become the model for medical partnerships that were transforming treatment abilities throughout the sector. The integration reports are remarkable, Liana said, joining him at the viewing window while accessing patient data through their shared consciousness. 17 different medical facilities are now running successful human and Veltoni partnerships, and patient survival rates have improved by 43% across all major injury categories. I see the LifeBond training programs are exceeding enrollment expectations, Doc noted, reviewing applications for medical personnel who wanted to learn interspecies healing techniques. Though most of them are choosing formal courtship processes rather than the emergency battlefield transfusion during corporate assault method we used. Probably safer for everyone involved, Liana agreed. Less chance of accidentally triggering ancient bonding protocols while treating life-threatening energy loss, though considerably less romantic. There's something to be said for relationships that begin with one partner literally sharing their life force to save the other during a medical crisis, Doc said. He accessed their bio-integration patterns, amazed at how completely their consciousness had merged while keeping their individual identities. The life bond had evolved far beyond its original medical function to become something unprecedented. A permanent sharing of awareness that improved both their healing abilities and their understanding of what partnership could become when two minds learn to work as a unified system. The corporate trials are proceeding successfully, Liana reported. Her consciousness touched his with information about the legal proceedings that had followed their exposure of corporate medical sabotage. Meridian Corporate Security has been dissolved. Their executives are facing charges for crimes against medical neutrality. And the weapons-grade medical technology they were developing has been transferred to humanitarian organizations. Any attempts to claim that life-bond partnerships represent unauthorized alien influence over human medical systems? Several, Liana said. But they've been dismissed by courts that recognize the partnerships as legitimate medical collaborations rather than foreign infiltration. Her patterns shifted to colors that Doc's improved awareness recognized as satisfaction. Apparently, the evidence of improved patient outcomes is difficult to argue against, even for those who oppose interspecies cooperation on principle. The evening routine they developed involved reviewing patient cases while sharing the kind of consciousness-integrated conversation that had become natural through months of bonded partnership. Doc could access Liana's emotional responses to treatment challenges. She could sense his technical satisfaction with properly functioning medical equipment, creating a level of professional closeness that went beyond anything either species had imagined possible. The new bio-integrated medical systems are performing beyond specifications, Doc noted, reviewing diagnostics that showed their healing abilities continuing to develop through shared consciousness. We are actually becoming more effective at this over time. The life bond was designed to improve partnership effectiveness through continued integration, Liana confirmed. Though I suspect our improvement has as much to do with genuine emotional compatibility as with ancient bonding technology. Emotional compatibility, Doc repeated, accessing their shared awareness to examine the feelings that had developed alongside their professional cooperation. You mean the fact that consciousness sharing has revealed that we actually like each other as individuals, not just as medical partners. The bio-integration requires emotional resonance patterns that can only be maintained through authentic personal connection, Liana said. Her luminescent markings shifted to patterns that showed deep contentment. which means our medical partnership was only possible because we were emotionally compatible from the beginning. Doc considered this, reviewing their shared memories of that first emergency treatment to analyze the emotional patterns that had made the life bond activation possible. You trusted me to perform a medical procedure that had never been attempted between species, he said. I trusted you because your immediate response to my condition was to risk unknown consequences rather than let someone die who'd been trying to help your people, Liana replied. Her consciousness merged more closely with his as they accessed the memory together. The life bond doesn't activate for those whose main concern is self-preservation. And I trusted you because you've been risking your life to save human soldiers despite knowing it would eventually kill you, Doc said. He felt their shared awareness settling into the peaceful coordination that marked their successful integration. Though I have to admit, consciousness sharing with you has revealed personality traits I never would have discovered through normal dating, such as the fact that your idea of relaxing after a difficult surgery involves mentally reviewing bioenergy optimization techniques while accessing 17 different diagnostic databases simultaneously. Doc grinned. Most humans would find that exhausting. I find it remarkably attractive. And your approach to medical problem-solving involves organized analysis of every possible failure mode, while maintaining optimism that somehow everything will work out anyway, Liana replied with amusement. Most Veltoni would find that contradictory. I find it perfectly balanced. As they settled into the shared meditation that had become their evening routine, a practice that strengthened their life bond integration while keeping their individual identities, Doc thought about the journey from emergency medical treatment to permanent partnership, with someone whose consciousness complemented his own in ways that improved both their abilities and their understanding of what healing could become. You know, he said, feeling their shared awareness settling into patterns that showed complete emotional and professional coordination. When I became a combat medic, my goal was to save as many lives as possible using the best medical techniques available. And now I save lives using medical techniques that didn't exist before we learned to share consciousness, Doc said. While partnered with someone whose approach to healing has taught me that the most advanced medicine happens when different views combine to create abilities that neither could achieve alone. He paused, accessing their shared understanding of how completely their professional and personal lives had merged. It's either the most successful career development in medical history, or the most elaborate way anyone's ever accidentally discovered they were meant to work together. Why not both? Liana replied. Her consciousness touched his with the closeness that had become the foundation of their partnership. Though I prefer to think of it as the most successful medical experiment ever conducted. One where both the doctor and the patient discovered they were better together than either could be alone. The best medical procedures, Doc agreed, always have unexpected positive results. Samuel Doc Reeves had started as someone who treated injuries that threatened individual survival. He'd ended up as someone who treated the barriers between species that threatened everyone's survival. One shared life force at a time. And somehow in the process, he discovered that the most important healing of his career hadn't been medical. It had been the repair of his own incomplete understanding of what partnership could become. When two minds learn to work together as a unified consciousness dedicated to preserving life in all its forms, regardless of species or the artificial boundaries that corporate interests tried to keep between those who needed healing and those who could provide it.